All right, y'all. We can ready to start this talk about it Tuesday one more time and see if we can get Samara Hough on the line, and we see if we can get her to join the group. Let's see what happens.
I think we're here.
You're I'm getting live. I don't know if that's your your computer. Generally, when we static, it's because
Okay, I unplugged it and everything.
number leave that alone. Maybe go with another. Is that possible?
Yep,
Okay.
gonna see we want.
So first one to walk
Dana, I'm so sorry. This is not how I was hoping for things to go.
because I know there is no level.
Okay. Now,
Okay, there you go.
is this better?
That is absolutely wonderful. Go to sit down and make yourself comfortable.
I'm in my guest room. That's what I'm doing
That's
right now.
okay. We're gonna be. Is that okay if we come into the guest room?
Come on into the guest room. Whoops.
Come on in the room. Okay. So now we're gonna start this all over again. So this is Talk About It Tuesday, and this is DSM Ministries, right? And so this is our second segment in recovery after rape. And so last week we had Linda Jackson. Of course, you and I both know her. We all worked together at one time. And so she discussed sexual assault as correlated to substance abuse. And so, of course, I'm extra excited to have you because, as I've told everybody, this is my Sam. This is Sam who trained me.
Oh, wow. Thank you, everybody.
So now, Sam, you know what? I gave you a list of questions, but I'm just gonna let you have at it. Just have at it.
Yeah, well, first, thank you so much for inviting me to come here today. I believe, too, that there's going to be a breaking and a shifting for those that will hear and that will be open to receive this. There's so much content that you gave me to cover, and so I'm going to just dive in with a little couple few things. One is that I just want to set
Sam,
the
turn your volume up just a little bit.
turn it up.
Yep.
Okay, how about that? Is it better?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, this is so different. Anyway, so just to set the tone for what we're going to talk about today, I will encourage you to take time for yourself, right? And so obviously we're going to be talking about some really sensitive topics today. Please do put questions in the chat or text Dana, however you get in contact with her, because I really think um, we really need to take care of ourselves during this time. Okay. Just a little bit about me. I work at the University of Michigan Flint now at the Center for Gender and Sexuality as a director there. And prior to that, I've had a history of working as an advocate, a strong advocate for survivors in campus settings and also community-based settings. So Dana already mentioned, I had a wonderful time getting able to help support a hand in training her, and she supported me. So this is a reciprocal thing in that time in my life as a new parent, um, as a new mom, new marriage. All those things were happening, and so I value you very much in my life for sure. This work is very sensitive to my heart as someone who has identified as a survivor, someone who has had violence unfortunately hit our home. Not my current, not by my partner, not by my beautiful husband. But that
We love
that
Brother Al, okay?
not
Let
with
me
Brother
say,
Al. Just want to be
we
clear.
love Brother Al.
Just be clear. No, but definitely, this has been something that's very personal to me, and so I definitely want to make sure that I say that up front and be really owning that piece as well. And then I am embarking on starting my own counseling business, and the name of it is Reflections Individual and Family Counseling LLC. And so I want
Well,
to give some information about
now,
that as well.
because you're let me interrupt you for a second. So now that you are finally, finally, finally getting there, because I remember talking about this thing how many years ago, but nevertheless, now that you're finally in God's timing, will you be sharing those resources with our viewers tonight? Will you be sharing that information? Will they be able to contact you?
Yeah, so I can share the phone number for sure on how to reach me. It's a secure phone number, and also be able to give you some information. It's coming up and it's growing. It's like a baby, so to speak, but it's definitely not new. I've been doing this for other folks in other organizations, whether it be campus or otherwise. So it's really exciting to be able to
And
get out
so
on my own.
the PIIs of the other people, anybody that contacts you will be protected, right?
Yes, yes.
I'm sorry. Would you please tell them what PII is?
per, uh, Personal identifying information, right? And so, look at you, PII. So, what that means is that there's several different platforms now because of COVID that therapists are using to provide secure teletherapy services, right? And so it isn't through Facebook or anything like that, because that's not HIPAA compliant. What they say, HIPAA compliant is not secure. But there are definitely platforms around that will allow you to have private conversations that are not recorded, that you also will be given documentation that have consent to services. And you're going to hear that word consent a lot in this conversation today. But certainly it's all up to you, how far you want to take your mental health, your personal health. And and I would be honored to have that be entrusted with me to be able to walk alongside you.
Okay, so not only are you providing counseling advocacy service, let me ask you this: will you go as far as going into the legal realm if that individual decides that they want to bring criminal charges, or they want to pursue further against their predator, their assailant? Will you be offering those things, or you've got resources to help tap into that?
Yeah, I would work in partnership with wherever your local domestic violence or sexual assault agency. In our state of Michigan, there's the Michigan Coalition to End Domestic and Sexual Violence, and they have a hotline for our state and could also direct you on where your agencies are locally that provide legal advocacy services. The services I'm talking about with Reflections is more clinical, so more psychological, more emotional well-being kinds of services, right? But I am familiar with the process of legal, and also navigating those systems very well. So I can tell you what to expect there, and also connect you with the folks that would be able to do more of the on the ground kind of, I would say, work and process, and getting you connected to things like PPOs and things like that, which I'm
Oh,
going to talk a little bit about.
now, I had someone ask me from the last event. They asked me, and I tried to answer this question, but I'm sure you'll be more informed and more about it than I am. Someone asked me, is there a statute of limitations, and does it differ or does it vary among states? If
Yes.
you Okay.
Yes. So it used to be that the statute of limitations was 7 years. I was looking this up too. It's on, if you want to pursue this more and learn more about per states, you can look on RAIN, the organization called RIINN, RAIN. And it's a national organization, and you can look up what the statute of limitations by the state. It also has some breakdowns by kind of a lot of legalese, as they say, but it has some breakdowns depending on the type of assault, like if it was to female or male to male, or if it was a certain age, like young child to adult. Like there are lots of different
Category.
differentiations of that, categories of that. And so and so what did it, from the time of the incident, you have 10 years or um, by the age of 21 of the person who was assaulted or harmed. For instance, if you look at all the different categories of criminal sexual misconduct, and there are four different levels of that, and those are really um, depend on, like I mentioned, different factors like age, if it where what was if there was penetration, if the person was asleep or incapacitated in some way, meaning like using, maybe both had passed out or were using drinking, or I'm sure previous persons who came on talked about that, right? And so you can look at those and be more familiar. But in the state of Michigan, it's 10 years or up to the 21st birthday of the person who's assaulted, by whichever one is uh, most, whichever comes first, I think is the language of it, whatever comes first. It's either age
Now,
21 or 10 years.
Kate mentioned of the four different levels of criminal sexual conduct. Can you elaborate on that? Because we may have some viewers that may not know the difference between one or the other.
Yep. So they're categorized by numbers. So a CSC 1 or 3 have carry the most um, significant time that a person could receive because of um, being found guilty. And as I mentioned, it has to do with those different factors. If it be in terms of the grading of the level. So it could be something that happened outside your clothes. Someone touched you underneath your clothes. Maybe they use an object, right? These are a lot of different ways in which they categorize each of the four criminal sexual conduct in our state.
So now with the numbers,
Mm-hmm.
am I correct, or would I be correct then, as in the least number? So CSC 1, would that be the one that is most
You mean
carries out?
most commonly reported, or you mean
Yes.
the most?
And you've got CSC 4.
Mm-hmm.
Which one is more, I guess the word would be, I don't know if I want to say lenient or more or less, because all of them are serious, but
Yes.
more, but some of them are more engaging than others.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the word I want?
Mm.
You have,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, that maybe like have force, involve force, or involve, like I mentioned, penetration. But I want to just be able to say though too, even if those things weren't present, even if there wasn't force, or if someone did not, if penetration was not, penile penetration, for instance, was not a part of what happened, the trauma is still very much real, right? And so even if it for instance, in my case, it was digital, right? So it was with use of hands. There's still a lot of trauma responses, as if um, it was something that was full on, as people say, penetration and all those things. And we have to be mindful of that.
Now let me stop you right there. For our viewers who don't know what that means when she said digital, well, in the medical community, fingers are referred to as digits. Extreme
Mm-hmm.
finger toes, they're referred to as digits. So that's why she said digital. Now, I had a young lady that I had a conversation with over the weekend, and she said to me, it's been years since her
Mm-hmm.
sexual assault happened. She said, and there was not penetration, but she was violated because someone touched her. Digital.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that trauma is still as real to her today as it was back then. And
Mm-hmm.
because it was done by an uncle, a family
Mm-hmm.
member, then we have that, what happens in this house, don't stay in this house, because your uncle, you know how your uncle is, and you should not go around your uncle.
Yeah. Can I ask? I don't know if can I ask what the cultural background of the person who shared that with you
She's
was, or the pardon?
she's one of us.
Yeah. So I think it's important to think about too, the layers of kind of cultural stigma, and just some of the things that go into what is passed on, particularly to young girls in the family, right? Um, so things like, you know, um, well-meaning things, like maybe, have your bathrobe on, or make sure you close your legs, or all these different things that, young girls are told very, very early about how to reduce their risk. But often what can happen is that we have um, this kind of stranger danger that occurs that is really about strangers and not really about the people that may be acquaintances. And researchers really say, and I've seen it um, play out like this, is that most times it's someone that person knows, is that has done the offense, is someone that um, has developed trust, right? So particularly family member, or maybe a new or a past relationship, a current one, or even members of the clergy, as we see. It's not just within, we see this a lot on when they talk about priests, but certainly there are folks who have really um, misused their power in our communities as well. We talk about people of influence, right?
Well, you
Um,
know what? When you say
yeah,
people of influence, I can go along with that because, first of all, we know that any type of any abuse or assault, it's always someone that's closest to you because it's that person that you trust. You have that relationship, and you allow them to come in because you say that's not, you don't suspect that person. Whereas
right.
with a stranger,
You would,
that
right, you would have your guard up. Like, so if someone,
right,
like, say in the beginning of a relationship, just hauled off and pushed you, or shoved you, then you might have a comeback or something like that. Like, wait, but if you've had a relationship, for instance, or maybe this has been building over time, there becomes a kind of a almost like an expectation. This is how this relationship goes. Or maybe survivors, particularly of domestic violence or physical violence, there's this piece of like, what did I do wrong? Or this kind of, I should have maybe did this and he wouldn't have, whatever, particularly in heterosexual relationships, right? um so, but there's something else I want to say, dive into a little bit too, about the cultural piece, is that there is a researcher in Detroit, Michigan. Her name is Jennifer Gomez, and she developed this theory called cultural betrayal theory, right? And so really when we talk
oh,
about,
you said
pardon?
you said her name was Jennifer Goldman
Jennifer
and
Gomez.
It's Gomez, Gomez.
Yes.
And you said it's called the cultural betrayal theory.
Cultural betrayal theory.
Okay.
Hmm. And so what she says is kind of like, you know, um, when a group has a shared experience. So we think about race, right? There's a shared experience of oppression that happens. And so meaning, of, racism, prejudice, what we're dealing with very, very upfront and in person right now in our political climate, we see things, right? Um, but then say a member of my community assaults me, right? um and if I then report that person about that assault, that survivor is also dealing with um the cultural betrayal, because now I've said this person, if that's part of my community, it's almost like this fear of participating in oppression against, say, Black men, or say, a member of my community, right?
Right, because
And there's like this.
why did you call him out? Why would
Right,
you say that?
right.
Why or as they say many times, that's a good man. Why would
Yes.
you say that about that good man?
Yes, that's
Don't,
so true. And it kind of gets you in your head, right? And so you're thinking like, well, what did I, am I, I don't want to get this person into that kind of trouble. I just want this person to stop, right? And so it becomes this double, like, kind of,
a double
well, there's double layers, really layers, more than double, because when you think about the systems, right? Although, yes, if you feel comfortable with reporting, for sure report, but we also have to deal with racism and sexism in the systems and reporting process. Is not always a very clean, a very responsive system, and so we have to be sensitive to that as well, of what
let,
makes sense for folks.
let me interrupt. We just had a situation that happened maybe about 2 years ago with a famous attorney that does commercials here, Mike Morris.
Oh.
He was at a restaurant, and the
Mhm.
young lady said that they had been drinking, and he began to sexually assault her. Immediately, the media took the side of the attorney, and the first
Mm.
thing that they did was say, well, you know what, now she's out, she's gold digging, she just wants money,
Yeah.
whatever have you. And so she hired another prominent attorney. She hired
Mm-hmm.
Jeffrey Tiger to defend her, who said no,
Mm-hmm.
be accountable for what they did. And of course, the situation ended up going away because they didn't want to defame or taint his reputation. But
Yes.
same things in what you're addressing now, because again, this is a good man and he has such and such going on for him. And how could you?
Right.
And that's some of those things that if we've seen that happens in the churches, you know,
Yes.
pastor, how could you say that? But the pastor was out of order, and
Mm-hmm.
he's used his authority,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak, to take advantage of his parishioners, which
Right.
I call it spiritual incest, because as a pastor, these people that sit under you are your spiritual
Yes.
sons and daughters. So
Yes.
if you've taken advantage of them, you committing spiritual incest.
Right. The spiritual trauma there for sure. And it is not, unfortunately, not uncommon. Right. So that's one reason why I brought it up, because for sure it occurs, and more frequently than not. And I will say, also being a member of the faith community, to be just be clear, I am Christian as well and love Jesus all day. Okay. It's the only reason why I feel like I have obtained my healings, because of that relationship with the Lord. But certainly, um, it there are things that take place and that and are not, and sometimes I would say too, from hearing from other pastors who aren't committing these offenses, that there are, this happening is kind of like rampant, right? But they don't necessarily always have the tools of how to respond either. I've heard that as well, of feeling like not sure what to do in that situation.
So it's
Mm-hmm.
very, oh, me myself, I feel one of the people that are very fortunate to be able to
Mm-hmm.
do that, because here it is. I've been educated in that arena. Yes, I'm a pastor, but then also I've also experienced it. So it
Mm-hmm.
allows me to be able to address those issues to those who have gone through or experienced. As a matter of fact, it was through the word of God that we actually end up here, that gave birth to this, because
Yes.
here it was, we talked about it out of Second Samuel chapter 13, where we had this very case scenario where we had Tamar, who
Yeah.
was sexually assaulted by her half brother
Brother.
Amnon.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, now there's that trust thing, because here it is. I've got this relationship with someone that I trust, and they violated me. And then now that the assault has happened, now she's also experiencing the shame.
Yes.
Go through that. Start right there.
Yeah, the shame is can be so paralyzing to folks, honestly, because I will say this, and I didn't plan to share this at all, but just there was a time in my life where a pastor had made several advances toward me, and it took a very long time for me to be able to even enter that city that pastor even lives in, because I was worried, like, what was going to happen if I see this person, or like I was kind of living in fear. Um and so I think it can keep you in a type of bondage, that shame, right? But we know that that was the reason why Christ came, to free us from that bondage, right? Of our minds even, right? And our hearts and our souls, right? So
Because we
really,
things like
mhm,
that bring about torment. You know,
yes,
because it'll replay it over and over again, and it'll make you feel that you're unworthy.
yes. And so, well, Miss Dana, and so there were times when I wouldn't even lift my hands in the sanctuary because of that shame. There were times I lost my song in worship because of that shame, right? And so and this happened when, I mean, I'm getting, a little gray, but this was in my 20s, and I'm not 40, 43. And so I remember that, and feeling that sense of shame that was really almost paralyzing, keeping me from my calling, obviously.
But then of
Amen.
course,
But
also but then you also have that part of that guilt and shame, and we know that that's why Jesus got on the cross, right? That's the reason why he shed his blood, the atonement,
yes,
so that he can rid us of that guilt and shame. But then you also have that other stigma, which I brought with this other thing, which I brought up in that service, and I had some people get upset with me about it, because like I told them, because of the fact that people have been violated many times by the opposite sex, they choose to go into homosexual relationships, same sex relationships, because they don't trust that opposite sex anymore. Then you also have people who have been violated, and then they allow their own selves, their demeanor. Like one young lady shared with me that her daughter was sexually assaulted, and they drug her by her hair. So now because of that, she keeps her hair short. Very
Yes.
painful. You know,
So
and you
those are kind of trauma responses, right? So
sub
I'm a
okay.
so so things like, you know, I've seen survivors will just, you know, cover themselves, layers of clothing all the time, like from, you know, some from a little bit, because they want to make sure that they're, you know, covered up,
Desirable.
or and not desirable, or overweight, right? Because if I'm overweight, then, you know, definitely no one's gonna want to deal with me. And then even too, like in the even in marital relationships, right? Not feeling sexually what's the word, like liberated, like not able to engage, you know,
Not
yeah, and
or
really
engaged.
it,
Okay.
not able to really enjoy fully, right? And not really communicating that to spouse, right, about that.
Because well, you know, because
Hmm.
sometimes you have people again as a result of the violation, people become promiscuous.
And then yes, yes, but even then, I used to work with a young lady that, you know, told me that she couldn't be intimate with anyone unless she was high, unless she was had been drinking, unless she was right. Hmm. The
Self-made.
only way I could do that is if this, and then the dealing with the aftermath of that. So that negative coping, I would say, and it could be from the what you were saying, that having multiple sexual partners. But with that though, um, clinically, there is a trying to find meaning of what happened. So people may be doing this over and over again, going through the motions in a way to kind of prevent themselves of being assaulted again. So I've seen women who will go back to their person who assaulted them, be intimate with them in order to regain control over what happened the day before or the night
So
or
they
the
need
week prior,
closure.
to have,
They
and
need that.
it never gets there because there hasn't been an interruption in that shame, that shame cycle, right?
Okay.
um and I will say this, and this is something that my pastor talks about all the time, is and there's something about worth and value and how that goes out the window. And so they're, you know, when I don't really care anymore about blah blah, right? um and so I know we've been focusing a lot about young women, and but I think it's also important too to talk about men, right? And also them being violated, um and or experiencing things at a very young age and not having anyone to tell them that that wasn't okay,
Well, right,
right?
because you have the stigma because men with that hegemonic masculinity, men
Mm-hmm.
don't cry, men are supposed to behave a certain type of way. And of course, if they say, I've been abused, I've been sexually assaulted, then now it's, oh, you just a punk. Or, you know,
Mm-hmm.
the shaming that they receive, you know, how could you allow that to happen to you? Because many
Yes.
times, you know, you have a man who's sexually assaulted, and you know, it's like gang rape almost. Especially, you know, it's almost like gang rape.
Yeah. And we talk about, and also in that scenario, that gets so much satire, right? So people say things about men in prison, don't drop the soap. Well, I mean, even if that was the case, that person was assaulted. And it's almost like there's this, you know, like it's funny or something if this happens to men, when in fact it does happen to a lot of men. And some men are coming forward. You see that in the media, right? Some men are coming forward, but you think about the age, like men are coming forward and they're grown. And it happened when they were like, you know, in the Boy Scouts or, you know, in college, and they're coming back, you know, things like that. And so I think that really speaks
For those
to
spaces, when you
trauma as well.
think about Donnie McClurkin.
Mm-hmm.
Donnie McClurkin shared his story. Same thing with Tyler Perry. If I'm not mistaken, I believe he said
Yeah.
something about that too. But I know for sure Donnie McClurkin said that. And as he said, he was violated by someone, and with that, he didn't think that he was able to be with a woman.
Yes.
If
Yeah.
I quoted that correctly, and I think I did.
Yeah. I think so. I
Mm.
think so.
So I
So
mean,
I
so
mean, I think like with anything, like I mean, I know that there's researchers talk about this, that there isn't necessarily a correlation between folks who identify as LGBT as also being caused because of an assault. But when you think about if I was, when I think about working with survivors in the past, who may say all men are dogs, for instance, for as an example, that mentality of like, well, every man is going to come at me and want to have to hurt me, then, you know, there may be more of an attraction now, so through a safe, what they may call a safe object. And so that person may then decide or become more open to relationships that are within the same sex. So I think you have to think about it in that way, and that, because of this trauma, it opens you up to a lot of different things that can happen if you are not um, getting some support or getting some help from what you've experienced, right? We're not tearing down the shame, rebuilding yourself up as it comes to value, right? Yes, I see you. Self-esteem, worth, value. Yeah, absolutely, right. And listen, and as people of faith, where that worth and value comes from is our relationship with our God, right? And being connected to the person who formed and shaped us, right, into who we are.
That's right. I create.
um right. And really getting secure in that. And so it can be discouraging what's happening in the world, where men are, men meaning humankind, are making these choices and are doing things that are harmful. But if we are able to not lose our sight on who is the author and finisher of our faith, who is the one that redeemed us, right? So really reminding ourselves of who we are in Christ is a way that we heal, is a way that we become restored, is a way that we can get out of bed. I mean, to be real, right? Like, so thinking about where your hope comes from, and it's not easy, but remembering that you will have joy, right, in the morning, as we say.
Now, with you saying that, um, when we have survivors who have experienced such a traumatic event, what about the family members who are there to support them? Do you have any advice for family members?
Yeah, I think it's really important for family um to hear and to listen, and to also be quick to respond in a way that is supportive and isn't judgmental. So what kind of the things that we talked about kind of, you know, we were talking about young women and how we're kind of we direct them on being aware of strangers, and not, making sure their legs are closed, or not, whatever, right? um but when something happens, then that victim blaming comes in. What did you do to bring that upon yourself? Kind of what did you do in that situation, versus responding with care, curiosity, loves, and restoring that safety of the person, that survivor, right? By just being able to listen, being responsive, particularly if there's a child involved, and being able to restore safety with them, um, and really being able to be equipped with resources, right? So we are God fearing folks, right? On this call, some of us here, but also being equipped with some of the resources that are available, like you mentioned, the advocacy and programs of that nature, therapy, if you are interested in going a little bit deeper, right, in terms of your healing process and what that looks like, and not having any shame about that, right? So reaching out for support doesn't equal that you are not strong enough, or that you are, less than capable of handling it. Often, I think, particularly in our community, women are supposed to be the strong matriarchs, never, break, never, bend. But certainly, a lot of us are carrying a whole heap load of trauma, not necessarily sexual trauma either, but it could be multiple layers of trauma.
Hey, I know, right?
And
You know what? Let me ask you. Since we have been going through quarantine,
yes.
I'm
Hmm.
sure that you've seen a whole lot more different things, numbers rising, and just so many different things about that now, because people are at home with one another. And there was a young lady who brought up a couple weeks ago, she said that she was sexually assaulted by her husband. And someone said, you can't be assaulted by your husband.
Yeah, so that's a big myth. In fact, when we talk about consent, we mean anybody, right? It can be, that person could be your spouse, your partner, um and it doesn't matter if that person is your husband. What matters is that you consented to it, and that you felt safe enough, as I mentioned earlier, about being able to be intimate and it be on your terms. So one example that we share often is, like, for instance, if I decide I consented to, I wanted to go to the store. If I said I want to go to the grocery store, and you get in the car even, and you shut the door and you start the car up, and then you change your mind, that doesn't mean that you can be demonized because you didn't want to go to the store now. Like, so I think in some ways we often think about sex as this thing where we have to, quote unquote, go all the way. And if you are uncomfortable at any point, it is the person who's advancing the contact, advancing the mood, to check in to make sure that that person is okay and ready to move forward, even if you'd had sex prior to this time, even if it was okay last week, making sure that it's okay now at each stage of um the uh the event. Or
Well, because you have a lot
yeah.
with date rape, right?
Hmm.
We've been out, we've been drinking, whatever we've been doing, we're under the influence. And now, we get engaged, there's the touching, the kissing, and so forth. And then all of a sudden I say, you know what, wait a minute.
Hmm.
This is not what I want to do. I'm enjoying the time that I'm spending with you, but I'm not ready for that yet. And then that other person says, well, wait a minute, this is foreplay. You done got me all revved up. It's going down.
Yeah, and I think that gives a kind of a disservice to the the man involved too, for example, in this scenario, because it's almost like communicating they can't control themselves, right? um or if it's no, then, oh, I'm gonna get I don't know where you're gonna play this. I might get blue balls. I mean, just things that people have said, right? And
We all
really,
grown folks here. It's
right,
okay.
I'm just like, Lord, I'm about to say this. But yeah, like, people may make these kind of comments like men can't control themselves, and that's just like a cop out. You know what I mean? Like, if that person really cares for you, they would be attentive to what your needs are, even even when it comes to the bedroom. So it doesn't matter what that person's title is. And when it comes to alcohol and drinking, legally, those CSCs that I was talking about, those categories, um incapacitation can mean that you've been drinking. That can be
So if I'm
defined that way.
incapacitated, then that means I actually cannot give an informed
Cannot.
consent.
You cannot.
I can't give consent.
No, you can't give consent, even if you both were drinking. And so it becomes the responsibility of the person who's advancing, right, the act, to be mindful of that. If you're comfortable, if you're safe, if them knowing that you've been drinking, well, they need to, and also they need to stop. And then also, what's drunk sex like? I mean, that's something else that you know we often talk about the college, like with college students. But just like, man, what's you have conscious, I mean, just thinking about all those things when you're
Because at
thinking.
that point, it's a control thing. Because of course,
Right.
that person has control over you to do what they want to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then that at that point, that's what we call them, drug facilitated assaults, right? drug
Say that again.
facilitated drug facilitated assaults.
Drug facilitated assaults. Okay, I got that.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, all right, Sam. It has been wonderful talking with you. So now, give us some final thoughts as well as the information to
Yeah.
reflect.
Oh, yeah. So I want to give you the phone number, which I did not put right here
No,
next
you
to me in my situation. But I want to give you um the Michigan Coalition, that hotline number. Um it's 855 voices 4. So 855 voices 4, and that is our state coalition. They also have chat if you have access to internet and you would like to just chat what you're looking into and not phone call. And then there's RAIN, which I mentioned, RAINN, RAIN. That was our national association for sexual assault. And I did not write down my phone number. Give me just 1 second. I'm afraid if I log out of here, I can't pull it up. But let's see.
Well, you know what? It's not a problem. If you do, then If you scroll up, you can go back to your main frame, your main camera. But if you can't, no worries. You can always give me the information and I'll enter it at the end of this segment. So no worries.
Okay, let's do that because I'm like a little paranoid a
It's
bit
okay.
about
I'm,
what happened today.
I'm just excited to be here. I'm excited to have you here, and
Yeah,
now that, and of course, I'm going to put my 2 cents in that if I can help or get in any kind of way to do whatever, I'm here. I'm
I know. Yeah,
right.
I know.
I'm excited. So whatever it is that I can do to support Rain, count me,
Oh, your
count
phone
me.
kept cutting off. I'm sorry, Linwood.
Uh, that's okay. That's okay. That's okay. Anyway, Sam, thank you so much for hanging out with us. I love you.
I love you back. I'll
All
see
right,
y'all.
later, honey.
Bye.
All right, you all. We had another wonderful Talk About It Tuesday. We saw the enemy trying to get busy, trying to interfere in that, but there was a lot of information that she gave. And then, of course, I'm going to wait for her to text me the information for her therapy called RAIN, and its acronym was it RAINN. See, I'm on a slow bus, but we're gonna get that together. Or Sam, if you're still watching, you can type it in the comment section. That's absolutely wonderful. So now, as we close out tonight, our second segment of Talk About It Tuesdays, recovery after rape, I hope that there was something that was said that was able to what set you free, or give you some information that you can give to someone else to set them free as well. Amen. Because we found out here that you, Rain, you have the control, and deliverance, restoration is owed to you. I am none other than Pastor Elder Dana T. Samuel, and I love you, and there is nothing you can do about it. And we will see you tomorrow. Talk to you later. Bye bye.